Hi, everybody. Welcome to lecture number 5 of chapter 6 and our 22nd lecture in this series. Today, I'll be talking about the very wide field in high voltage engineering, that is the partial breakdown in solid and liquid dielectrics. We learned partial breakdown in gaseous dielectrics. In gaseous dielectrics, the phenomenon is uh, the same, but since the gases are replaced quickly, it doesn't do it doesn't do much harm, especially when it takes place in atmospheric air. However, uh, even in gaseous dielectrics, when the partial breakdown phenomenon takes place in gas insulated sealed systems, GIS, you've known, it may cause deterioration in the quality of the gas. So it is not desirable. Partial breakdown, we can also say local breakdown or the breakdown in any dielectric which do not bridge the two electrodes. The two electrodes between which the dielectric is there. It may take place in the dielectric at some location. It may take place simultaneously at number of locations within the dielectric, but still locally, still not bridging the two electrodes. So they will also be known as partial breakdown, number of partial breakdown. Sometimes it is in what we call it to be microvoids. N number of locations are there where partial discharge, or as we put it, partial breakdown may be going on continuously or even over the life of the apparatus. The phenomenon of partial breakdown in solids especially is very dangerous because it can lead to premature breakdown or the deterioration in the quality of insulation and sudden failure of the dielectric. That is nothing but short circuit. Even in case of liquid dielectrics, like in gas, the liquid replaces the fresh liquid replaces the damaged portion of the liquid. It may not be that crucial as in the case of solid dielectrics. So, to understand the phenomenon uh, in solid dielectrics, a lot of work has gone, a lot of specifications are available in every country. IEC specifications, uh, terms are defined, their measurement procedure is defined, their magnitude of the charge displaced by partial discharge is uh, standardized uh, permissible maximum magnitude in a gadget, because the partial breakdown is not desirable in any gadget. But in some apparatus, it does take place. And it does take place all throughout its life. One very important example of the apparatus in which partial breakdown phenomenon carries over all its life is nothing but electrical machines. In electrical machine, as you know, is the taped insulation wrapped over the conductors. It will certainly leave some air pockets in between, and those are vulnerable for partial breakdown. But the material chosen is such that certain intensity of partial breakdown within the machines or in any apparatus is permissible. Above that intensity of partial breakdown, it is not desirable, and the buyer can reject the apparatus if it crosses the intensity of partial breakdown in an apparatus is beyond the limit prescribed by the standards. We also have learned that partial breakdown takes place only in case of extremely non-uniform field configuration. In many gadgets, for example, in high voltage power cables, which is coaxial cylindrical system, very high voltage power cables, the field is tried to be achieved weakly non-uniform. And in weakly non-uniform field, partial breakdown should not take place. It does not take place also. But what happens that like in power cables, in many other gadgets which may be designed for weakly non-uniform fields, there may be some locations, we call it weak points, because of some thing lacking in the insulation. And these weak points could be most prominent one are the air pockets within the solid dielectric. When you have contact of the solid dielectric with metal, for example, the contact may not be perfect, and imperfect contact gives rise to microvoids between the two surfaces, and that becomes the weak point. They may be because of some bad quality of production, some protrusions, metallic protrusions in the dielectric. And if there is a metallic protrusion, as you can see in this diagram, metallic protrusion is shown here. There is high field intensity there, and the field intensity there at the tip of the protrusion is extremely non-uniform. This is a typical diagram, as you can see it here, is longitudinal cross-sectional view of a coaxial cylindrical power cable, high voltage power cable. Let's try to study the construction of this. As you can see, this is the main conductor which is carrying the voltage and the current. And the surface finish of the main conductors are stranded wire conductors. May not be smooth surface. The external surface of the main conductor may not be a smooth surface. Therefore, all such high voltage cables at 11 kV and above till up to 750 kV, they are given an extruded layer of kind of a semiconductive layer. This black one, as you can see it here, this black one is the the black one is the conductor screen, as you can see it here. I'm talking about this conductor screen over the conductor, and this is a semiconductive layer, extruded one, which gives a smooth surface above it. And above that, the dielectric comes into picture, another extruded layer of the dielectric. In very high voltage cables these days, the most common dielectric is nothing but PE, polyethylene, and which is cross-linked after it is the layer is extruded. You can say XLPE, cross-linked polyethylene. And then to make it coaxial, another concentric conductor, which is at ground potential, concentric conductor, which is at ground potential, as you can see, the hatched portion has to be given. Now, between this metallic conductor and the dielectric, again, there may not be a perfect contact between them, between a metal and a plastic material, polyethylene. So, another semiconductive layer of polyethylene is extruded over the insulation also. So the two semiconductive layers, as you can see in this diagram, the darkened portion, dark line, this dark line, and this dark line is semiconductive layer. Their conductivity is not like metal, but it is also not, the insulation resistance is not very high. So these conductive layers, extruded material conductive layers, become part of the metal, not the part of the dielectric. So they acquire the, you can say, when they become part of the metal, they acquire the same potential as the metal. So the inner extruded layer, semiconductive layer, acquires the potential of the main conductor. So the main conductor dimension increases a bit. Thickness of this extruded layer, semiconductive extruded layer, may be maximum 1.5 or 2 millimeter. And over the insulation, it acquires the potential of the coaxial or concentric conductor, which is at ground potential, as you can see it here, which is at ground potential. So the role of semiconductive layer is to provide a microvoid free contact first between the main conductor and the dielectric, and then between the dielectric and the grounded conductor, to make the whole system of power cables to be a perfect coaxial cylindrical configuration. So this is, and now what happens, there are number of places where the imperfection may take place. One, you have tried to overcome the microvoids. Another, there may be voids within the dielectric. As you can see it here, for example, this is shown as void within the dielectric. There may be micro protrusion, as I mentioned. There may be some foreign fibrous or some kind of foreign material in the dielectric. All these things become a weak point. And there may be more than one weak point, number of weak points. If there are microvoids, these n number of microvoids. So all these become weak point, and you would understand the field intensity at these weak points will be enhanced. You don't know to what extent, but it will be certainly enhanced. For example, the voids filled with air. Air has got a much lower breakdown strength, so it becomes a weak point. Then the relative permittivity epsilon r of air is 1, and that of the solid dielectric material is, it may be 2.5, it may be 3, 4. So the field intensity proportionately increases in the void, and the void itself is having very weak dielectric strength or breakdown strength. So as soon as some low, not very high field intensity is exerted on at the void, there may be partial breakdown phenomenon starting there. So this is what actually happens. Then just a minute. Yeah. Another place where the partial breakdown phenomenon may take place when you make joints or N terminals in these cables. You have to make joints, you have to make N terminals. You have to, at some place or other, you have to discontinue the outermost concentric conductor to make the joint. And if it is not given a proper shape, there may be in the dielectric a tangential component of the electric field. See, the field in a coaxial cylindrical configuration we have learned long back is a radial field, and weakly non-uniform field is formed. But because of the disruption or discontinuation of any one of the conductor, the field there is no more radial, and that gives rise to tangential component of the field. So the field intensity at discontinuation of, especially it comes into picture when we make joints, the coaxial cylindrical conductor, as you have seen, gives rise to tangential field. And this is the location where field intensity is high, as you can see it here. So the main dielectric there gets stressed very highly, and there may be some phenomenon of breakdown taking place at such locations. And that is why in power cables, the abrupt discontinuation of the concentric conductor is not permissible. And another thing, because of the tangential component, there may be a breakdown through the dielectric, or there may also be breakdown over the surface of the dielectric, as you can see it here. This is over the surface of the dielectric. It has been shown here. That is called surface breakdown, or also known as surface discharge. We have learned also about it. We have shown you the surface breakdown phenomenon taking place on a glass plate at very low voltage. It requires very low voltage to produce surface breakdown because of the enhancement in the field intensity, tangential field intensity. So these phenomenon may give rise. So normally what happens, that the abrupt discontinuation of the concentric conductor is not allowed. The concentric conductor is given shape in the form of a cone, and the cone would look like, I am drawing it here, like this and like this. This is the stress cone, we call it here, the stress cone, because it is to take care of the electric stress at the discontinuation of the concentric conductor, which is required to be done when you are making a joint, N-terminal joint. You can say preparing N-terminal to connect the cable, and therefore for making N-terminals, for making joints, very specialized techniques are adopted, so that the electric stress in the main dielectric does not rise excessively. So I hope another important thing is when partial breakdown in the solid dielectrics takes place, as we learned yesterday in extremely non-uniform field configuration, for example, because it takes place only in extremely non-uniform field configuration. After some time, there may be a partial breakdown channel formed within the dielectric, which is a permanent damage to the dielectric. And these breakdown channels grow in the form of treeing, we have also seen in the last lecture. And all this, I have shown you a block also in which treeing has been produced with a high voltage pulse voltage, impulse voltage, we call it. All these are irreversible damage. In the case of air, it was some volume of the air was damaged, which is replaced by the fresh air. So it is not that matter of concern when partial breakdown activity takes place in gaseous dielectric, especially in atmospheric air. But it is a matter of concern when it takes place even in gaseous dielectrics in enclosed chambers. When it takes place in solid dielectrics, it causes irreversible damage. It can lead to premature breakdown. It can bring down the life of the apparatus tremendously. So the partial breakdown phenomenon in case of solid dielectrics is really a matter of concern, and a lot of work has gone through to understand, to make specifications, to control, to judge the quality of the dielectric by the measurement of partial breakdown. Let me see if I missed any point. Yeah. Yeah. What are the ill effects of partial breakdown? It is common, but one thing, it may not be so uh, prominently heard in case of solid, but we have learned in case of uh, gaseous dielectrics in open, audible noise is one of the ill effects. You can hear very strong audible noise, for example, when leader corona takes place. So audible noise is a ill effect of partial breakdown. Then wherever partial breakdown may be taking place, because it is a repetitive process, it gives a kind of a signal. Repetitive pulses may make a signal. So electromagnetic interference, EMI, as we call it to be. So I'll just write down here, AN, audible noise, EMI, electromagnetic interference, and then obviously when some energy is being consumed there, it will produce heat, isn't it? It will heat up the dielectric there, which may lead to further consequences. In case of solid dielectrics, some byproducts, chemical byproducts, gaseous byproducts may be given rise. In air, it is also, I have smelt ozone production. If you keep the partial breakdown activity in atmospheric air for a long period within the lab, you can feel within the lab a pungent smell of ozone. So ozone is given rise in case of atmospheric air. In case of other dielectrics, solid and liquid, degeneration of the dielectric, chemical byproducts, gaseous byproducts may all be given rise. So these are the And of course, the partial breakdown activity consumes power. That is also a matter of concern for the engineers that the power consumption enhances. Let me tell you, the power consumption enhances considerably in case of transmission lines under rain conditions, because the rain droplets all become sharp points, and partial breakdown at the droplets, at the bottom of the droplets, may take place. So the corona activity, you can say, in transmission lines enhances under the rain condition. So the significant amount of power increase, power loss, you can say, in the transmission lines takes place because of partial breakdown activity. So wherever partial breakdown may be taking place in any of the dielectrics, it will consume some power also. And the more is the intensity, more are the location of the partial breakdown, more will be the power losses. Yeah. So let's. I think you have been able to appreciate. I have tried to narrate every possible aspect of partial breakdown. Now let's try to understand the partial breakdown phenomenon analytically. So you must make an equivalent circuit of the partial breakdown. What forms, what parameter is found by the dielectric where the partial breakdown is taking place? Nothing but capacitance, because it is all taking place within the dielectric, or within the dielectric in another dielectric possible, isn't it? So it is best simulated by capacitance. So let's see here, as you can see here, C1 is the capacitance of the void, that is the weak point C1, as you can see on the diagram, and C2 prime and C2 double prime are the capacitances between the void and the electrodes, because the dielectric, total dielectric, is between two electrodes. So on the two sides, C2 prime and C2 double prime, capacitances are, we can name them, and C3 is nothing but the capacitance of the test object, of the total test object. And see, as you see here, uh, for the measurement, you need a coupling capacitor for the measurement purpose, so that the reflections from the far end are suppressed, and that coupling capacitor is Cc here in the total circuit when you measure the partial breakdown. And C2 is the equivalent of C2 prime and C2 double prime. This has been taken here. C2 is the equivalent of the C2 prime and C2 double prime, and C1 is the location where the partial breakdown, or the, you can say, the capacitance of the weak point where the partial breakdown activity would come up. And Zm, as you see here, is the measuring impedance of the circuit. For the measurement is taking place here, you have partial breakdown detector equipments are there. You can measure it. I've been measuring, and that has to be that you need a measuring impedance in there. So I hope you have understood. This is the simulation, capacity simulation by capacitance of the weak point and rest of the dielectric, and this is the measuring circuit in which we are measuring the partial breakdown, applying at the terminals the AC power frequency voltage. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, I think. Yeah. The weak points, as I mentioned, or the defects in the solid dielectrics have lower electric strength because they are foreign materials as compared to the main dielectric, and there is an enhancement of the electric field density over there. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, when you apply the voltage here on the oscilloscope screen, also you can see, and there is a small correction here. This is not change. This is this R charge. Now let's consider, yeah, the magnitude of the voltage at which PB at C1 incept. That is called PB inception voltage, and that has been given name, the value here, U C1 small I. Small I is taken as a suffix for inception of the voltage. Inception of the voltage means when uh, the voltage at which the partial breakdown activity begins. Inception means, you can say, beginning. And the voltage at the PB, when you are raising the voltage, at certain voltage, the certain terminal voltage, you can detect the signals given by partial breakdown with the help of PB detector equipment. And when you raise it a little bit and bring down the magnitude of the applied voltage to the apparatus, there will be some voltage at which the partial breakdown activity taking place will cease. You can say partial breakdown activity will cease, will not take place at a lower, when you are lowering the voltage. And the voltage at which the partial breakdown activity cease to happen, cease to occur, is known as UC1E. The suffix E, small e, is chosen there. So the inception voltage and extinction voltage, that means no more partial breakdown, is there. And that has been plotted over the sinusoidal cycle of the applied voltage. This is the applied terminal voltage, and UC1I is obviously higher than UC1E. And once again, the partial breakdown activity may repeat in the negative cycle also. It depends upon the conditions. It may repeat because when the negative, in the negative cycle, the voltage is increasing at a certain voltage, as you can see, minus UC1 I and minus UC1 E would also occur. So the partial breakdown activity would be there at positive as well as at negative cycle of the alternating voltage applied on the apparatus. And these are, let me tell you, these are the voltage of the terminal voltage. You can measure only the terminal voltage. You actually do not measure, or it is not possible to measure. It may be tried to be estimated, but it is not possible to measure the actual voltage applied at the weak point or at the void. Some proportion of the applied terminal voltage will be applied at the weak point. That is what we are going to try to estimate. And every time when the voltage is increasing across the void and it reaches the inception voltage required, there will be a breakdown locally. And when the breakdown locally takes place, the voltage across the void would drop. Any breakdown, the voltage will collapse. The collapsed voltage is UC1E extinction. So this, because the applied voltage has a sinusoidal cycle, positive or negative polarity, uh, the there will be a kind of a repetition of the breakdown process. While voltage is increasing, the breakdown takes place, voltage drops at the void, but applied voltage is more, so the voltage will build up across the void, again the breakdown, like that. The repetitive process, it has been shown here by these figures. This is the repetitive process of breakdown going on at a given terminal voltage. You can say this is the given terminal voltage, which is still at the increasing order, and then in the negative polarity, decreasing order. And every time the breakdown across the weak point or the void takes place, it will give rise to a pulse form of current, because when the breakdown takes place, high current flows. We know that. So the pulse currents are represented every time the breakdown takes place. So there is a you can say number of pulses given there, and this is repeated, and the rate of repetition of the number of pulses taking place there would depend upon the total magnitude of the voltage applied at the terminal. So this is how the partial breakdown process uh, is explained on application of the uh, voltage, the figure 15, as you can see it here. Now the inception voltage UC1I can be given in terms of applied voltage and capacitances shown in the equivalent circuit diagram. In the previous circuit diagram, what we saw it today. So UC1I will be equal to the applied terminal voltage UT C2 upon C1 plus C2. If we go back to this, as you can see, the terminal voltage here is this one, AC terminal voltage, which will be equal to, as we have seen, C1 upon C1 plus C2. And then the considering no change, sorry, same mistake I did, which is printed there, considering no charge at C1 initially, because there may be a capacitor having some charge, because the void or the weak point forms a capacitance within a capacitor. So that may be having some charge, but let's consider no charge at C1 at the weak point initially. The drop in voltage across C1. What is the drop in voltage across C1 as shown in the diagram up there? Delta C1, let's call it the drop in voltage, can be estimated to be the UC1, the voltage applied at the the weak point C1 into C2 upon C3 plus C2 from the equivalent circuit. That means delta C1 is equal to the voltage across the weak point UC1 into C2 by C3 plus C2. And if the voltage drop at C1 is assumed to be equal to the corresponding drop in applied voltage at the test object delta T, then it can be given delta T. I mean, the corresponding drop in the applied voltage, because the drop due to breakdown process at the weak point is taking place. So that voltage corresponding drop at the terminal delta T can be given as the UT into C2. From this equation you can derive C2 square upon C3 plus C2 into C1 plus C2. And the actual charge QC1 transposed to the weak point, that is void, in this process from the circuit, because the charge is being supplied by the voltage applied at the terminal UT, that can be estimated QC1 to be equal to delta C1 into C1 plus C2 C3 upon C2 plus C3. And by equating further, the charge delivered at the power input terminals can be approximated using the figure 14. Figure 14, yeah, we have already seen the to be Q is equal to delta UT. From these equations, you can derive this yourself. C3 plus C1 C2 upon C1 plus C2 plus Cc. We have to take into consideration the coupling capacitor also, because it is there in the circuit. The total capacitance formed in the measuring circuit. And this charge, the charge delivered at the power input terminals, because of the breakdown taking place locally and in the void, Q is estimated with this equation, as you can see, and this charge is known as apparent charge. Because it is not the actual charge, it is you are measuring it only from the terminal voltage, that is the fluctuation in the terminal voltage. You are estimating it. You are not able to measure. Actually, you don't know what is the capacitance of the void C1. What is how C2 is divided, and what is the total C2. Coupling capacitor you know, and C3 you know completely. So this charge is not the actual one, but it is, you can say, measurable one, measurable charge. So this is apparent charge. Now, what can happen if it is taking place at one single point? We call it this apparent charge to be impulse discharge at one single point. But it may not happen that it is taking place at one single point. It may be taking place at several points within the dielectric or within the apparatus. So one single you will be able to detect of the highest magnitude first. When you increase the voltage slowly, the discharge or the breakdown taking place with maximum intensity of discharge at the worst position, where at the worst location within the dielectric or within the apparatus. But when a dielectric or when the apparatus is working at its rated voltage, there may be partial breakdown activity at n number of locations. So let's call that total discharge within the dielectric because of the partial breakdown activity. The sum total of discharge, QS, S is for sum total, takes into account all the individual partial breakdown processes occurring in the test object within a certain time frame of the applied voltage. And A more comprehensive investigation of partial breakdown phenomenon in an object is made possibly by measuring QS, but very few apparatus are partial breakdown detectors are designed to measure QS. I had one, and most of the apparatus or most of the measuring instruments are designed to measure the QI, that is the partial breakdown discharge at the single location of highest intensity, QI. So that we can uh, just, yeah. So we have defined partial breakdown inception voltage, we have defined extinction voltage, rate of repetition is given by N, how frequently it is repeated, and energy in an individual partial breakdown, let's say if it is by W. When you measure the two types of partial breakdown, that is one at the QI at the single max of uh, single at single location of maximum magnitude, and the sum total. So with increasing voltage, the whole scenario may look like this. You can this is a measurable or measured result on an apparatus, and obviously when it is sum total, the total uh, uh, charge will be in it is will be more, so it is given here in nano coulomb, and when it is measured for one single location of highest magnitude, it is in picocoulomb, as you can see. So the QI, after it is inception has taken place, it retains a plateau, or the same intensity of discharge is taking place. When you increase the voltage, it may increase the repetitive rate, but the intensity of discharge at the location would continue to be same. Whereas when you increase the voltage, there may be more number of locations where the partial breakdown activity would start taking place. So the cumulative breakdown discharge, cumulative discharge intensity is proportional to the applied voltage. It increases with the application of higher voltage. So these are the two very important characteristics for the QI and Q. Uh, and one more, I would like to show you a figure. Yeah, this is the last for today. The measurement of quantities of partial breakdown, as you can see it here. This is the time duration when the it is measurement has taken place. The partial breakdown impulse currents in a cycle, you can say. Then the magnitude of discharges taking place in a cycle here, and QS, as you can see it here, the QS when the magnitude of the in a cycle magnitude of voltage applied is increasing, the QS would also increase. The sum total of the all the maximum discharges taking place, and then I here is QS by delta T. The magnitude I is the average discharge current in the measured by the apparatus, and average discharge current, as you can see it here. This is equal to, you can say, 1 by delta T, then all the discharges taking place at all the locations can say Q1 magnitude plus Q2 magnitude up to Qn magnitude. So all the discharge or the magnitude of charge, that is current measured, gives you rise to average discharge current in the apparatus taking place. That is how it is analyzed. So let's call it a day, and we will further talk about the partial breakdown activity mm, for the more aspects of our partial breakdown activity in tomorrow's lecture. Okay.